Ukraine has turned into America's testing ground for coronavirus vaccines, enabling Ukraine massively to infect the Crimean Peninsula with coronavirus, but members of Ukraine's armed forces are walking COVID-19 cases infecting everyone. None of that is true, and welcome to StopFake, the place where we break down Russian disinformation about Ukraine and a little more. So let's get to it. Reacting to Ukraine's participation in European clinical trials for a COVID-19 vaccine, several Russian media outlets declared the United States has turned Ukrainians into experimental guinea pigs, and Russian analysts claim that American pharmaceutical companies are testing their vaccines on Ukrainians against their will. Russian propaganda includes lines like, "This has nothing to do with safety for Ukraine," "Western masters will test their safety of their new vaccines on Ukrainians," or "Death on U.S. orders," and "Ukrainian guinea pigs jump to their end." This kind of scaremongering could be seen on Ren.tv, Newsfront, Narodny Korrespondent, and others. Now, in mid-October, Ukraine's health ministry announced that Ukraine would take part in European clinical trials for the coronavirus vaccine. And of course, Russian media began publishing stories claiming that Ukraine was turning into a laboratory testing ground for Western countries. Clinical trials of medicines are a normal world practice which has nothing to do with experiments conducted on Ukrainians, as Russian media claim. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, new vaccine development goes through several stages. The clinical development segment of the process has 3 phases. During phase 1, small groups of people receive the trial vaccine. In phase 2, the clinical study is expanded and the vaccine is given to people who have characteristics similar to those for whom the new vaccine is intended. In phase 3, the vaccine is given to thousands of people and tested for efficacy and safety. Ukraine will be participating in the 3rd stage of the COVID vaccine trials. Since the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, more than 250 clinical vaccine trials have been conducted throughout the world. Nearly all EU countries are participating in clinical trials, along with Japan, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the United States, and other countries. 4,200 Ukrainians will participate in the clinical trials in Kyiv, Vinnytsia, Lviv, and Ivano-Frankivsk. Russian media have unleashed several fake stories back in November, claiming that Ukraine is planning a coronavirus provocation and intends to build several special camps on the border with Russian-annexed Crimea, where people infected with the virus will be housed. This wave of distorted and fake stories appeared after Ukraine's Minister for Reintegration of Occupied Territories, Oleksiy Reznikov, met with EU Commissioner for Crisis Management Janusz Lencharczyk. During the meeting, Reznikov told Lencharczyk that Ukraine is ready to offer help to its citizens in occupied Crimea, where COVID-19 appears to be particularly virulent. During the meeting, the parties also discussed the necessity of providing access to all of Ukraine, including occupied Crimea and Donbass, to international organizations. A joint statement issued by the two politicians read, quote, "Together we must ensure that the International Committee of the Red Cross has access to all captives, not only in occupied Donbass, but also in occupied Crimea. Humanitarian camps at the Crimean border are not confinement camps where people sick with the coronavirus from all over Ukraine will be kept." According to Deputy Minister for Reintegration of Occupied Territories Ihor Yeremenko, mobile hospitals and pharmacy kiosks in the vicinity of the Crimean checkpoint will be set up in order to provide first aid and needed medicines for Crimean residents who are currently experiencing drug shortages on the peninsula. A new service center will be open at the Chonhar border town checkpoint. Yeremenko said, quote, "We are trying to help people in Crimea by underscoring the importance of wearing masks and maintaining social distancing. We are carefully monitoring the situation in Crimea and have consulted with several international organizations about humanitarian aid for the peninsula. Unfortunately, the Russian side refuses to give permissions for such deliveries." According to Yeremenko, Russia refuses to grant international humanitarian aid organizations access to Crimea. Meetings have been held with the Kremlin about the state of COVID-19 infections in Crimea. Moscow, however, refuses to allow such organizations to enter the occupied peninsula. Rights activists and Crimean Tatar representatives are in contact with Ukrainian authorities on the spread of the coronavirus in Crimea. Currently, there is a shortage of beds, and the real number of infections is several times higher than what Russia claims. Yeremenko also said, quote, "People are buried in plastic bags with the wrong cause of death listed on their death certificates." Now, according to Yeremenko, Russia has denied access to Crimea not only to international organizations, but also to Ukrainian citizens, as the number of people crossing the administrative border between the mainland and occupied Crimea has dropped to 700 per day. Crimean residents who are not Ukrainian citizens are not allowed to go to the mainland to buy medicines that are in short supply on the occupied peninsula, and according to Yeremenko, this could lead to a significant deterioration of the epidemiological situation on the peninsula. Several Russian sites are circulating stories claiming there are massive COVID-19 infection spikes among Ukrainian servicemen, citing police intelligence sources in the self-proclaimed Luhansk People's Republic. Donbas Sevodnya claims that 46 servicemen from Ukraine's 80th Brigade that participated in training exercises in the Lviv region of western Ukraine have been confirmed with coronavirus. The publication further claims that these servicemen have not been quarantined and continue with their duties, and while at the same time they're infecting others with the virus. But, according to Ukrainian military press officer Valentin Shevchenko, Ukrainian servicemen have not undergone any recent training exercises in the Lviv area. Oleksiy Mazepa, the head of Ukraine's Armed Forces Medical Section, told StopFake that the 80th Brigade is one of the units with the lowest number of COVID-19 infections among Ukraine's military. Ukraine's military have never had such high rates of infection as these Russian publications claim, Mazepa told us. 46 COVID infections is simply not true, he said. Mazepa also emphasized that before being deployed to eastern Ukraine, where Ukrainian soldiers are battling a Russian invasion, all servicemen undergo a 2-week observation period and COVID testing. Ukrainian military policy on COVID infections of its personnel is that light forms of the virus are treated at home under a doctor's supervision, and severe cases are treated in a military hospital. That's it for this week. Be vigilant, stay safe, and be on the lookout for fakes. Wearing a mask, washing your hands, and social distancing will protect you from the coronavirus, but critical thinking will protect you from Russian disinformation. And if you spot any disinformation about Ukraine, forward it to us for a truth autopsy. I'm Marko Suprun, and this is StopFake. Thanks for watching.